The prerequisites for this video are completing preschool or kindergarten. By the end of our time here together, we will be able to explain the hierarchical network model. The hierarchical network model consists of what we call building blocks. Just like back in preschool and kindergarten where we're putting building blocks on top of each other and connecting them together, we have the same concepts that apply inside this hierarchical structure. So in this video, we want to explore exactly how this hierarchical structure is modular and how it leverages those building block design principles. I want to paint a picture here, and it's not going to be a pretty one. Let's say our network design was such that every time we attach more devices to the network, we simply add a new network switch. So let's say we've got a network, maybe it's small, we've got 3 switches here, and we've got a bunch of users connecting in up here, users here. Maybe we've got some servers plugged in, so we've got servers over here and servers over here. Told you this picture wasn't going to be pretty. And now all of a sudden we've got some new users coming on, they're over here, can't really reach anybody, so we're going to install a new switch. And you know what, this time we're going to attach to that switch and this switch here. And we just sort of grow this network organically. Say we attach more users down here, and this one we're going to attach up to these 2 switches because, hey, we want redundancy, right? But hey, you know what? We like redundancy so much, let's just connect that to all of these switches. And we start to see that there's this gigantic mess of a network that starts to appear. I mean, who of us wants to raise your hand right now and volunteer to manage this network? It's going to be a nightmare to figure out when something goes wrong what exactly the problem is. So we can all agree that this is a mess. So the question is, how do we make a clean network? This is where I want to introduce the concept of a building block. A building block is going to be a set of network devices, let's say switches or routers, whatever kind of devices we have in this particular block, and they're going to provide connectivity for something. It just depends on what the purpose of the block is. For example, if the purpose of this block is to connect my users, well then, hey, my users are going to connect to these switches right here. Now what's great about a block is I can connect it to another block. Let's say I have a block up here, and we've got a pair of switches in here. And just by the nature of saying that I'm going to connect these 2 blocks to each other, now I've defined a little bit better how these devices are going to connect. For example, we might want to build a full mesh, but just among the switches that are in these 2 blocks. And then, hey, I could build another block for other users to connect to, and this would maybe have a pair of switches in here. And let's say I want to connect this user block to the block up above. Well, in that case, I would know that I'm going to connect these 4 switches to one another. This is a much cleaner design than whatever we were doing over here, because now I can connect whatever block I want to another block. That said, this doesn't do me any good if I just start haphazardly connecting these blocks to one another. Because if I do that, then it's no real different than what I was doing over here on the left. This is where the hierarchical network model comes into play, specifically the hierarchical part. The idea of a hierarchy implies that we have different levels of network access that are going to stack on top of each other. So for example, we might have all of our users attaching at the lowest level, and then maybe we have more mission critical devices right here in the middle. Maybe this would be those servers that we talked about in the previous drawing. And then up here might be the most mission critical applications. Maybe the internet comes in here. Then we might have firewalls and other mission critical network appliances that are tied in at that layer. And this is good. This is a good start to a network model, but it still has some flaws. For example, what if I wanted another block of users and I want to connect that up to the servers? Okay, well, I mean, we could do that, but how many of these blocks do I want to attach to my servers? And also, do I really want my users to go through the switches that my servers are connected to just to get out to the internet? That doesn't seem very prudent. What if instead of this hierarchical straight up, what if we put a hub? A block right in the middle that we call the core, and then everything else attaches peripherally to this core. And so let's say we've got 4 or maybe 5 different network blocks that all attach to this network core. And now these blocks can serve different purposes. We mentioned servers that are serving up data in the data center. That's very important, so maybe we give them their own block. And hey, you know what? Our users could go into their own block. We mentioned the internet. What about our wide area networks, our connections to other buildings? And hey, you know what? We have all those users we mentioned, and then we just spun up new users somewhere else. So those users could be in their own block. We could have as many of these user blocks as we want, because as we expand, if we decide, hey, we've got to add some more, we'll simply add a new block and connect it into the core. As we can see, we can scale this out to as many blocks as we want, because it doesn't matter how many blocks I have from the course perspective, so long as I have enough resources here, and the resources we're typically talking about switch ports, we're talking about bandwidth, and maybe even network speeds. As long as I can meet the technical requirements of this core, I can scale out to as many of these blocks as I so desire. And I assign network devices to a block based on the services from the network that it needs. For example, servers might need a little more resiliency than users. And hey, users, by the way, we might need power over Ethernet for the phones. But we don't need PoE up here in the data center because servers don't run on PoE. So we allow those network services to define for us a set of needs, and we segregate our network devices accordingly. This is the hierarchical network model. It's designed to scale first and foremost, but it also gives us consistency as we build out our networks. And with that, you are now able to explain the hierarchical network model. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.